When I joined my first bass club, Fairfax Bass, in 1995, I was 25 years old, and even though I hadn't really fished much at all, I thought I knew everything about the sport, and I certainly wasn't going to listen to some old guy telling me what to do. And there was an old guy in our club. His name was Alden Partridge Calvo Caresis. Everyone called him Calvo because otherwise you'd run out of daylight trying to pronounce that entire name. And Calvo was pretty much a badass. He was 78 years old, I believe, when I first met him, 77, 78. He had been a prisoner of war in World War II. He had also fought in Korea and Vietnam, and he had certainly fished all over the world. But at that point, he was more or less a non-boater. And you could count on him when he was in your boat to throw two lures. One was a broken back Rebel in some discontinued color that he would buy by the gross, and he would paint the belly orange with a fluorescent marker. And the other was a Crock-O-Gator Buzzbait. And I really didn't think much of it. Again, I wasn't going to listen to some old guy telling me what to do. And you look at the Crock-O-Gator Buzzbait, it wasn't a very sophisticated looking lure. It had, instead of an R-bend, it had a closed eye. It had a head that looked kind of primitive, actually. It looked like it had been hammered down. And there were other buzzbaits out there that looked fancier that I wanted to throw in the Potomac's grass. And I do remember in the subsequent years having him as a non-boater in my boat. And it's kind of disconcerting to have someone who throws a buzzbait all day, because you just hear that clack, 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 and you start to get attuned to it, especially when they're getting bites. All of a sudden, whoosh, that bite comes along, and then you're geared up and you're not focused on your own lure, but rather what they're doing the rest of the day. And he got a fair number of bites on it, but at that point, once he was into his 80s, he wasn't a very aggressive fisherman. So he passed a few years later, and I continued to fish a buzzbait quite a bit. But I never really thought about that Crock-O-Gator until 2016. I went to a Bass University seminar in Columbus, Ohio, and Wesley Strader was talking. And he was talking about how on tidal rivers, he likes to throw a black buzzbait with a gold blade. And I don't remember if he mentioned the Crock-O-Gator specifically, or if when I got home, that was the only one that I had that was black with a gold blade. But I started throwing that Crock-O-Gator, and I started catching the absolute dog snot out of the fish, particularly in that quarter-ounce size, which I know a lot of people don't throw as much. You can't throw it quite as far. It might helicopter a bit, but coming over the thick grass in the Potomac, it just seems to glide, and it seems to get bit really well. So over the past now 8 or 9 years, I've been throwing that Crock-O-Gator a ton, mostly in the black with the gold blade, but also in some other colors. And I've had a great year on it since April. I've been catching just a ton of fish until last week. You know, you don't lose a lot of them, but one of mine, I had the rivet break and the wire was just bent by too many snakeheads after a while and it just wouldn't run straight. So I started to get nervous, and I have a decent inventory of them, but I decided, you know, you never know with a small company. Is the manufacturer going to go out of business? Are they going to discontinue a particular bait? So I went to Tackle Warehouse, and I was kind of aghast to see that they were out of the quarter-ounce model in black with a gold blade. And in fact, I started looking at other retailers, and many of them didn't even carry that size. So I started to worry that they were being discontinued. So I emailed the company. They assured me that that's one of their best sellers and they're not discontinuing it. But I figured just in case, I better make an order. So I made my order directly from Crock-O-Gator this time. I'm sure by the time you see this, Tackle Warehouse will have the quarter-ounce model back in stock. But if you like this bait, or you think you might like this bait, I'd recommend ordering some as soon as possible. And I'm going to show you what I ordered this time so you can get a sense of what I thought I'd need. I can shove a lot into one of these little Tyvek envelopes. The first thing you can see is I got 2 of the quarter-ounce models with a white skirt and a silver blade. In an ode to Calvo, who liked to paint everything red, I got one of them with the red head and one with the traditional white head. But now when I need a white buzzbait, when I'm sure fish are feeding on shad or maybe in a lake situation, I'll have those ready to go. One of the really cool innovations that Crock-O-Gator has come out with in recent years, you know, everyone now, instead of throwing a skirt, throws a toad on their buzzbaits. They came out with this buzzbait. You might be able to see it there. It's unskirted, made to hold a toad. It's got 2 barbs there to hold it on. The real key though is the toad that they came up with for it has an actual hole where you can thread a small trailer hook in. One of the problems I always find of throwing a buzzbait with a toad is that you get a lot of short strikes, and unlike a skirted buzzbait where it's easy to use a trailer hook, it's harder with this one. They made it easy, so now you can actually have the best of both worlds. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can throw a buzzbait with a toad on the back and also a trailer hook. Well, the 1/4 ounce is my go-to on the river. There are times when you need a heavier bait or a bigger blade. So I got the black with the gold blade in both 3/8 ounce and 1/2 ounce to add to my collection. I do have a fair number on the pegboard already, but it never hurts to have a few extras. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, I got 5 of the 1/4 ounce models in black with the gold skirt. It's small. It looks like some others 1/8 ounce buzzbait, but it throws remarkably well. It makes a decent racket out there, and the fish just eat the dog out of it. It's just an amazing bait. I highly recommend you get some no matter where you fish. If you like to throw a buzzbait, this is one you may have overlooked just because of the way it looks. It looks, as I said, kind of primitive, but it's amazingly effective. It's been on the market for 40 years. Highly recommend you get some. Give a little shout out to Calvo when you catch that first, second, and third fish on it. You're going to want to order some more.